is anytime I hear somebody that is adamant that they tell somebody what to do with their money before they ask them any questions about why and what matters to them, because of that financial junk drawer where everything's siloed off. But Brock, you made a great point. Billions of dollars convince us to put money in things that lock our money away for less controls, less certainty, less peace of mind. And billions of dollars convince us that consumerism is the way to go. Almost like those two things were designed to feed each other and to keep us kind of chained to the system.
If we're going to be intellectually honest about the financial world, the true eighth wonder of the world would have to be properly applied principle of leverage. Brock, what you just said is the ability to leverage capital to create value. We mentioned earlier the ability to have uninterrupted growth. There's not another asset on the planet that you can experience uninterrupted growth simultaneously with the ability to borrow against and control that environment.
All the marketing in our world is spent on, you got to put money in your retirement plan so you can retire, and you got to do this. But then on the other hand, it's all the other marketing is how to get us to spend money as easily as possible and use credit. And then we're in bad debt. And most people don't even realize that them funding their retirement accounts is usually causing the problem of them not being able to get out of debt. If you just pause your retirement plans for just a year.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Welcome back to Cashflow Legendz, joined here by my two dudes, Brock and Nate. And I don't know when this will come out, but we are right around the corner from Christmas. My wife said this morning, hey, babe, you do realize in 7 days it'll be Christmas. And it always amazes me how no matter how prepared I feel for Christmas, whether it be having the money available for my wife to do the shopping or anything else related to planning, it always seems to sneak up on me. Like I'm always baffled of like, how did it get here that quick? So, what does that have to do with what we're talking about today? I think it has more to do with mindset. We're going to be talking about, mastering our money, which we talk about a lot. But Brock and Nate, before we get started, I think gratitude is so vital and we don't really think about it a whole lot, but we're coming into the season that gratitude can be found. Maybe what's one thing that you are so grateful for before we go into this Christmas season?
I mean, I feel like we say it a lot, but obviously our family. When you said earlier that Christmas sneaks up on you, so today is my daughter's 12th birthday. And from the moment that she could talk, she has this habit of counting down the days to her birthday. And so Christmas never sneaks up on me. I always know well in advance that it is on the way. But so my daughter, even though Christmas is a week away, she didn't sleep last night because she was so excited about her birthday today. But definitely family. And, we've got a youth event tonight at church. And so just a reminder of God's grace and all the things that he allows us to do. Definitely grateful for Jesus more than anything else. So yeah, family and just the awesome opportunities that the Lord has given us.
I feel like this needs to go into some full transparency and B-roll. So if anybody watching YouTube just saw Brock's face, it's because we had just talked before we hit record that Brock was going to go first and Nate went first.
Hey, I'm excited. You're excited, Nate. That's awesome.
That's right. I'd rather tame a tiger than push a mule. All right, Brock, your turn.
That's right. For me, I agree with Nate on, just being grateful, having gratitude with, first of all, Jesus. I just finished Matthew again, and it's always fun to read through that, especially during Christmas time and walking through that. Grateful for my family. We just got back from our usual Disney trip during Christmas time, which was a lot of fun. And just, my community. I also got back from being in New York City and Austin and speaking at all kinds of different places and being around my kind of people. And it was just, when I get around my type of people that are growth minded, that are really trying to impact the world and be their best versions of themselves, I just get energized and pumped to keep going. What about you, Brandon? What's your gratitude this morning?
Gratitude this morning is, I'm going to kind of combine them. It's fellowship and how important and beneficial it is to just spend time together with other couples and friends and potential friends around food and just good conversation. And there's just so many blessings that come from that. Also, last night, my daughter, I believe, has a beautiful singing voice and she takes voice lessons. And I got to play guitar with her in front of a crowd, the small crowd, while she sang. And what I love about that that I'm grateful for is that it's another great reminder that we're never too old to do anything unless we tell ourselves we are, and that discomfort and vulnerability combined often get us to the next place that we're proud of after the fact. And so I really am grateful that the Lord's allowed us to see that discomfort's not a bad thing. And somebody asked if I was nervous, which I really thought I was going to be. But truth be told, because it was all about her, I was just in the background playing. It was so awesome. There was not 1 ounce of nervousness because she was the focal point. And that reminded me of the blessing that we get to work with people every day. It's not about us. It's about how we can help them. And the more they feel confident, the better. So on that note,
Well, and Brandon, I'd also say I'm pretty grateful for Christmas season and having friends that bake cookies, because my kitchen counter is full of cookies, Chex Mix. I mean, you name it, I got the snacks.
I think you need to send some our way if you're loaded down.
If there's any left, I will.
Okay. All right. So we've all heard that supposedly Albert Einstein said, lots of people say, other people said it too, that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. And that sounds really catchy, appealing. Ooh, I'd really love to benefit from that. But the reality is, sadly, is that 80% of the world seems to be getting hammered by compounding interest instead of being benefited by compounding interest. And if we think about last week or last time we recorded, we talked a ton about mindset. I think all of us would agree, and I want to hear y'all's thoughts on however deep you want to go in the stall process. Investing in ourselves and our mindsets and reevaluating what we think we know to get better at what we know and continuing to grow is one of the greatest mindset shifts that we can have first. And that compounding interest will benefit us more than almost any other type of money compounding interest. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I think that what Albert Einstein probably said was the compounding of numbers is probably the 8th wonder of the world, if he said that at all. I don't think he was talking about money, but there's a lot of misconceptions about, compounding your money. I believe 100% that compounding your knowledge, your experiences, your expertise, investing in yourself and compounding that way is the greatest return you will ever get. I'm a huge proponent of that. I speak it every day, and I live it as well. I think that the greatest place that you could invest, and the first place that you should invest, is in yourself, because your human life value is the source and creator of all your property value. So if you grow your human life value, you'll grow your property value. But I often just have to ask the question, have you ever met anybody that has actually become wealthy by compounding their money? Find me somebody who consistently put money in an account and compounded it over time and is now considered really, really wealthy.
Yeah, if you want to talk about compound interest, the only way it's the 8th wonder of the world is if it's uninterrupted over a long time horizon. But compounding interest in and of itself, if it's interrupted, it's not as flashy as it sounds.
Now, you said over a long time horizon, and that just connected the dot of what Brock just said about your maximizing your full potential and your human life value, and we won't go too deep in it at this point, but we'll come back to it. A lot of times when you and I and us, we all have the conversation about what your greatest asset is. Very rarely does somebody say to me the first time, myself and my ability to create income. It often, unless they're an uber successful entrepreneur already, it often is something that you can't measure. It's like, well, my family. Okay, and that's a great asset. I'm not saying that's not, but in the sense of money and compounding ability and interest, most people have never heard the conversation about what is your human life value and would you rather operate off your maximum potential or what you think you'll need. So we start with a lot of really important questions when we go through this process of what is compound interest. Brock, I love your question. Do you know somebody that has told you, just by putting my money this place, it created this much ability for my money to compound that gave me this much wealth that allowed me to live the life in alignment with what wealth and freedom means to me? I don't know of anybody. And I've talked to a lot of people who told me that compounding interest was so important, okay, before I ever understood what we know now. So let's dive into real quick why this is really a double-edged sword to believe this, and why most people struggle, even though we're told left and right and billions of dollars are spent to advertise locking our money away for compound interest. Most of us are on the wrong side of compound interest. Would you guys agree? So let's touch on that a minute. What do we mean when we say that?
Well, let's first go back to compound interest. So what is, how does how does something compound? So what that means is you put money into an account, it earns interest, and then that interest earns interest, and then so on and so forth. So it continues to grow over time. The reason that most people are on the wrong side of compound interest is because of the rules of the big three: financial institutions, the government, and corporations. What those rules are they want our money on a systematic basis consistently over a long period of time, and they want to hold on to it for as long as possible, and they want to give it back to us in the smallest increments as possible. Because when you look at our US economy, our health is dependent on the velocity of money within our economy. How fast is money moving? How many times are we trading dollars for value? What is going on in our economy to where it's constantly moving, right? So the rules are in their favor of institutions, government, and corporations to say, give us your money so we can hang on to it for you and compound that rate of return. Where on the backside of it, they're not concerned about necessarily compounding money. They want to use your money that you've stored in their house to go create velocity elsewhere, or put another way, they want to use it as building cash flow elsewhere. Because the more that money that they have in their pockets, the more that they get to use somewhere else. An easy example would be like, if I'm the bank and I offer Nate $4, if he gives me $100, that's pretty good for him. Like, he's in a good spot. But now I have control of his $100. He gave it to me because he thinks I'm going to give him that compound interest. So over time, that $100 is going to continue to grow every year. Where on the backside, Brandon, you come to me and you say, hey, Brock, I need $100. And I tell you, oh, that's perfect. I'll give it to you for $8 of interest. Well, I just took $4 to control 100 and created another extra $4 on my own money, right? So what I would say is, most of us are on the wrong side of compound interest solely because we just don't know the rules of the game, blinded to think all we need to do is separate ourselves from our money and let it grow in somebody else's hands.
You just touched on something. If we're going to be intellectually honest about the financial world, the true eighth wonder of the world would have to be properly applied principle of leverage. Brock, what you just said is the ability to leverage capital to create value. We mentioned earlier the ability to have uninterrupted growth. There's not another asset on the planet that you can experience uninterrupted growth simultaneously with the ability to borrow against and control that environment. So that's why we love whole life insurance so much, is because of the peace of mind, the consistency, there's predictability there, all that stuff, but also control that goes with it. Having an opportunity to apply leverage in your life without taking on the traditional risk that a lot of leverage would introduce into your life simultaneously is really powerful, because most people don't get that opportunity.
So here's a real life example from this week. Visiting with some members, awesome members. And the average credit card debt percentage that I typically see, if there is credit card debt, conservatively is 22%. Okay. But it's normally closer to 30.
Yeah, easily 30.
Easily 30. Okay. So let's just say, and this is round numbers just for teaching purposes, because it's hard to be easier to draw this out. So we're visiting, and we always start with, what's going to bring the most value to you? Well, they had a new unexpected cost come up in their life, which is relevant for all of us. Doesn't matter how much money we make. And they said, we want to be sure we can handle this, but right now we're not able to save any money, and we're barely able to pay our premiums on our whole life policy. Now, they've been members for a while. Okay. So we kind of look at all their moving pieces. So let's just say, for round numbers, they have $120,000 in outside debt between student loans and credit cards that are anywhere from 5%, and vehicle loans, 5% to 35%. All right. So the first thing that we have to ask ourselves is, where are our current money flows going off the income that we earn? Okay. So let's just say, for round numbers, they're making $100,000. So I start reviewing their flows of money. And Brock, I think your dad calls it financial physics, and I don't know where that came from originally, but it's really just sometimes a small tweak in the order of operation of where our money goes first, with no additional effort other than changing our system, can make a gigantic difference. So this is what happened. So I'm reviewing their stuff. Well, they were saving money for retirement in about 7 different accounts across qualified, non-qualified, stock market, non-stock market, that equated to about $1,200, $1,100 a month, while they were getting hit in the face by a 30% headwind interest. Okay. So I asked them, what are you making rate of return on those accounts that you have $1,100-$1,200 going to? And they're like, well, I don't know. I said, is it more than 30%? And they're like, no. I said, okay. So I said, would you be willing to explore a different way of thinking? They're also making overpayments. And this is very normal. They not see this all the time. So this is not we do what we know we can do based off the current knowledge we have. Simple as that. So we have to be introduced to something new to decide if we want to do something different. So we had about $250 of overpayments to credit cards, plus the $1,000 to $1,100 that was going to these savings vehicles that were not getting any benefit for their goal of getting out of debt. And they were going to have debt for the rest of their life if they stayed on the path they were on. With one small tweak of order of operation, we got their current whole life policy fully funded, which then gave them more cash value to borrow against. We redirected the overpayments and the saving dollars to cycling the money through their life. And in 12 months, hypothetically, based off their behavior, key piece, they go from having no savings to saving $2,000 a month, fully funding their premium and having 20 to 25 grand, and then almost all outside debt gone, other than the student loans, which ends up being gone in like 6 years. No additional energy, just a rethinking of their thinking. Because when you put them side by side on a piece of paper and you say, do you like scenario A or scenario B better? It's a no-brainer. But the thing is you have to be vulnerable enough and willing to say, I don't know everything enough. And we have to create trust enough, guys. We have to, by how we treat people, for them to go, hey, I'm all ears. What I've been doing is not working. And holy moly, are you really telling me that we can control $2,000 a month just by changing the order of operation? So Nelson said this, we better understand, we better be in two businesses, the one we love and banking. Now, it's hard for people to understand that what I just described was banking if you've never had the conversation. But what Brock just described about me and Nate, that's banking. And so if we can start taking over some of that banking process, we don't have to go chase rates of return in the market or in qualified plans if we don't want to. I'll leave it there and y'all tell me what y'all think.
I think, you just alluded to a lot of great stuff. I think the funniest part is all the marketing in our world is spent on, you got to put money in your retirement plan so you can retire and you got to do this. But then on the other hand, it's all the other marketing is how to get us to spend money as easily as possible and use credit. And then we're in bad debt. And most people don't even realize that them funding their retirement accounts is usually causing the problem of them not being able to get out of debt. If you just pause your retirement plans for just a year, it's just like, take care of your debt. Because if you take care of your debt, you'll be saving more. And if you really wanted to, just start the 401k or whatever back later with even more money. Like, get that in order first. And then if you wanted to, you could have that fake miracle of compound interest over the next long haul, whatever that is.
It reminds me of what Nelson said, is once we know what the problem is, we'll know what to do. Because once you see that problem and you're brought to the forefront of, oh, these are the rules of the games that have been keeping me chained to the system, then you know what the keys are to unlock you from the handcuffs. And then you typically don't go back to that same way of thinking, even though you got to fight it because you've got that traditional path in your brain that's hard to overcome.
And I think it's important to realize, like, it's not necessarily your fault to an extent. It's just almost every single person that comes into my practice and probably y'all's practice lives in what I call the financial junk drawer. They've showed up where they've made siloed financial decisions on everything that they've had with different people under different circumstances for different reasons at different times of their life. And they've never been able to see everything on one page where their cash flow is coordinated, their assets, their protection, and their savings, their debt is all on one page so they can actually see what you mentioned earlier, Brandon, about what my dad calls the financial physics of, hey, if we make this decision, here's what happens over here. If you can see it in the macro perspective, you can know what a micro decision does to the overall picture. But most people can't do that because they've never been able to see their financial life on one page. And once you understand the rules of the game, you have a game board to play on, and you can test and verify those decisions. Now you put yourself in a power position to take care of your finances and then put you in a place where you're actually living intentionally and not by default.
When I think about being in the rat race, I think about a maze. This idea, like this picture of kind of like looking at a maze, and there's a path, a clear path, but it's surrounded by all these other paths and it's hard to see. And so efficiency is really just getting on the right path to get out of the maze.
And that efficiency piece is a word that I never remember discussing through all my initial traditional financial planning. There was never this words of like, Brandon, do you want to capitalize on your maximum potential as efficiently as possible with as little risk as possible, with as much certainty as possible and as much peace of mind? And so a conversation that we've been having a ton, and Brock, I always use this, but I love it. When someone starts telling me what they want to do, I say, why? because we've kind of created a framework. And if anybody's interested in this framework, just message us in the comments or send us a message. Little 1-page framework of what does wealth mean to you and what does freedom mean to you? Because that's different for everybody. And if you don't have some kind of idea of what that means to you, how the heck can you design a path of where you want to go with your money and how it creates that? And then all of us have the 4 F's in some way, shape, or form: faith, family, fitness, and finance, that is built into our life, whether we have good habits or no habits or bad habits related to them, they're still habits. And so how do we want to simply make those things create alignment? Because then we go from guessing with all these financial items in the financial junk drawer to bringing them all on one visual that we can see and go, oh, if I move this piece here, it impacts this piece. And I don't want to do that right now. I want to gain control here, and I may want to move that piece off the board. Now we're making conscious, aware decisions that is much more in line with what we want to accomplish. So here's how I know for sure that we have the blessing of knowing something different is anytime I hear somebody that is adamant that they tell somebody what to do with their money before they ask them any questions about why and what matters to them, because of that financial junk drawer where everything's siloed off. But Brock, you made a great point. Billions of dollars convince us to put money in things that lock our money away with less controls, less certainty, less peace of mind. And billions of dollars convince us that consumerism is the way to go. Almost like those two things were designed to feed each other and to keep us kind of chained to the system of just one small tweak. So how many people out there do you guys think are out there like the awesome couple that I'm talking about yesterday?
95% of people out there.
Yeah. I was going to say hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
Okay, so then the next question is, why are they out there, and why do they, which was once me, okay, just full, no judgment here. Why do they keep doing what they've been doing if it's not getting them where they want to go?
I think a couple of things is, number one, they don't take the time to sit down and look at what's going on in their world, right? And they don't communicate with those that they share life with. If they do, like, let's say they're married or something, like they don't communicate and get a plan around what's going on, and they have no clarity. You've got to spend the time, pay attention to your finances to know what's going on. Because if you don't, how are you going to measure anything? How are you going to know what's right for you, what's not right for you? If you're in the black, if you're in the red, like you've got to take the time to be intentional of just looking at your finances at least once a month, at least, of saying, hey, we're good here. We need to do something here. My dollars are aligned with what I say that I want. But most people just don't do that. And I think that's where most people start. Or they say that they are, but really all they do is listen to a snippet on TikTok and think, oh, I got it, I'm good. Like, okay, well, if you saw something on TikTok, do some research, figure out what's going on, and then build from that.
Now, you got any thoughts?
Well, I think about professional athletes as an example, because what they tend to do is they pay someone else to manage their money. Celebrities and athletes both. And a lot of times it's because they're too busy. They don't want to have to deal with that. Sometimes it's because people show up in their life and start taking advantage of them. The examples that I think about are, there are some people that are wealthy enough to pay people to manage their money for them. But those managers are actively looking at their money like on a daily, weekly basis, not an annual basis or anything like that. So if you're not wealthy enough to pay a money manager to manage your money, then you've got to start taking some responsibility for your situation.
So you guys are all talking about the same thread of intentionality and getting clear on what matters to you. So one of the things that is just such a blessing that we get to do is we get to introduce people to a potential different way to see things, and then they get to decide what they want to do with it. So a lot of times here lately, I've been asked, how come you don't charge for your services up front once they've experienced the value created on the backside? And my answer now, I'm not saying that this won't change, so y'all give me some grace, is that I don't want to drag anybody into this that we have to drag around, because this is a life process. I want to create an opportunity, as Nate does, for you to be so excited and confident about what you're doing that you naturally start telling other people about it. Because I believe this is much more about us as a whole also, but we have to get right at the you and me level first. So if somebody tells me that money doesn't matter to them, I immediately ask them if I can be lovingly blunt with some tough questions. And this sometimes happens in the first 30 minutes of a conversation, that if they've asked me to join them with what we know. And I'll just say, hey, what do you spend the most time doing in your life? life? Most hours, where do they go? Almost always the answer is work. And why do you spend all those hours going to work? And I just let it sit there, and it can get real uncomfortable because then they go, oh, money. So let's decide why you say money doesn't matter, because if that were the case, you wouldn't go to work. And so if we agree that we have some faulty thinking, which is probably just conditioning because of consumerism and the big three, are you willing to explore that? I don't want somebody to charge me to tell them that and let them decide what they want to do with it, because that can be done in 15 minutes if they're open to a delicate conversation. And if they're like, nope, I'm not willing to explore that, then if you're happy doing what you're doing, I'm happy for you. There's no need to drag them in. When you get to the backside of the process, because these members I'm telling the story about earlier have been members for several years, it's an ongoing process. Now they are inviting you to the conversation as a coach from the sideline going, hey, watch that blitzing linebacker. That's really meant to take your wealth, not let you keep it. Okay. They're going to sack you if you don't see your blind side because your tackle's taking a break. Whatever the situation is, then they decide what they want to do with it. And now we're going from feeling like we have no choices to at least 2 to 3 choices. And it's a lot easier to make decisions with clarity when I go, if I do this, it creates this. Most likely, if I do this, it creates this. If I do this, it creates this. Which one do I want to do? And when husbands and wives, one of my favorite things to experience, get on the same page about the purpose of their money, the conversation about this costs too much or we can't afford that begins to dissipate, and the conversation about what kind of life do we want to live intentionally, where do we want to see ourselves, our kids, our family, and what we stand for, and are we in alignment? Because it's a lot easier to reprioritize where your money goes when you're crystal clear on where you want your money to take you. But if you're not, that money's just going to get sucked out of you. Taxes, consumerism, Starbucks, it doesn't matter, because you don't have a better option in your mind that you can visualize. So you just do what you've been doing. And that is why I know I love what we do, because there's no telling anybody what to do, ever.
It's always fun to have these conversations, Brandon, because we get typically halfway through towards the end, and I'm like, are we even talking about the thing that we started talking about anymore? Or have we actually gone a lot deeper and talking about different things that are a result of our original topic? And I think, going back to our original topic of compound interest and, what it is, how it works, why it might not actually be the eighth wonder of the world. One of the things that we often want to talk about is, of these compounding accounts, a lot of people want to talk about, hey, our money is compounding. We're, deferring all the taxes. Well, if you defer all the taxes on that compound money, you're going to probably need that money one day, and you're going to have to pay all that money one day. So who are you compounding for, right? A lot of people don't realize the real world of compound interest. So if let's say it's in a qualified account, if you are compounding your money within the qualified account, when you take your money out of that account on whatever day it is, you'll pay taxes on it. Whether you take all the money out on one day or you take little amounts out over time, you'll pay taxes on it. And if you don't take it all out at once, well, that's a tax in and of itself, because you don't want to pay the tax. So why touch my money, right? Tax in and of itself. The other is, let's say it's a non-qualified account. It's a brokerage account where you're earning interest, it's growing. Well, whether you realize it or not, yeah, you're compounding the account. Your money's growing in that account, but you're also compounding the taxes right underneath it. So there might be the miracle of compound interest, but there's also going to be the nightmare of compound tax right below it. And that nightmare of compound tax is compounding at the exact same rate of return that your account is growing at. And so the question then becomes, is there a way that you would like to flatten or eliminate these taxes on this account to create something else? And so if you can understand the physics of those decisions, those financial decisions, now you can create more velocity in your world to where you're creating more wealth in your world without having to worry about compounding within an account. What if instead of compounding a retirement account balance or a balance in an account, and you started realizing how you could compound your cash flow and your own growth? I'm pretty sure you would go much, much further if you compounded your cash flows than in an account balance.
Yep. And I think that's a beautiful connection to the fact that money's just a tool, and you would rather have a flow and movement of anything you're doing to grow than something sitting still. Okay. You don't grow muscles by looking at weights and sitting still. You don't have a healthier body by stuffing your face with something unhealthy and saying, I want to be healthy. There's always some kind of choice or movement going on. And I asked this the other day to a member. I said, what is the most profitable, long tenured business business in the history of the world. It's banking. And so I happen to just have gotten done with the reading Joseph's story, The Coat of Many Colors. And you remember Joseph experienced a lot of trials. His brother tried to kill him. He got picked up as a slave. He ends up going to Egypt. He becomes the second in command because of Lord's sovereignty. And he has a dream that there's going to be 7 years of them prospering and 7 years of drought. Okay. When he began to store a percentage of all their profitable years, that was a storehouse. That's a bank. That's a place where you hold valuable things, whether it's money or weed or whatever. Now, because they had the greatest storehouse of wealth, whatever wealth was at that time, during the 7 years of famine, what did people start doing to be able to survive? They had to come to the bank of wealth and make a trade. So by the end of it, Egypt owned majority of the land, majority of the cattle, majority of everything that was a value of exchange, except for the people in general, because they were already indebted to the bank. This is banking. We either will be indebted to it, or we can create a system which just happens to work best with your human life value and insurance and whole life to control the banking process in our life. And that's really what you're seeing when you see control of more cash flow a month, like Brock's talking about, and the velocity of money. So compounding interest is way more fun when you see it come into places that you control. Compounding interest is way more fun when it's in alignment with what wealth and freedom means to you related to faith, family, fitness, and finance. And compound interest is way more beneficial when you go, oh, I don't have to take risk and delay if I just control what I can control now by investing in my greatest asset. That's the best compounding interest that we could ever have. So we appreciate you joining. We hope that brought value to you. We're also so thankful always if you comment, you like, you subscribe, you share. I'm always amazed, guys, that anybody listens to us talk truthfully, and I mean that humbly. And I hope that we're just good stewards of the information that we've been given. We're not anything special. We've just been shared information by lots of thoughtful, caring, loving people that wanted us to know the information that we know, and they've mentored us, and we want anybody who wants to at least consider something new that may be better than what they're already doing, even if it's great, to have that opportunity. So until the next time, we hope you guys have a great week, and we appreciate you sharing your greatest asset of your time with us.